Today's lesson is Chapter 4, Lesson 3, Greatest Common Factor. Greatest means the best, right? The biggest. That's what we're finding today. Before we start, the vocabulary you need to know is what is greatest common factor, or GCF. What is the greatest common factor? Well, that is the largest common factor between two numbers. Common means they have something alike. So greatest common factor is the largest factor two or more numbers share. Remember, factor is a number that goes into it. Remember, we did like 20, 1, 20, 2, 10, 4, and 5. Those are all factors of 20. Greatest common factor is when we're going to take two numbers and we're going to figure out which is the biggest one they have in common. And it's really important to know greatest common factor because you will use it a lot in fractions. Now I'm going to show you 3 ways to find greatest common factor, and I'm going to have you figure out which way works best for you. And I'm also going to show you a shortcut. But I'm going to show you 3 ways quickly, and then you can rewind and figure out which one works best for you. The first way is just listing out all the factors. Now this is probably the most time-intensive one, and I'll show you in a little bit how to get a little shortcut on this, but we're going to start out with this. So for example, what if we needed to find the greatest common factor of 16 and 24? So what we can do is write out all the factors. So let's start with 16. 1 and 16. 2 and 8. And then 4 times 4 is also 16. Those are all the factors of 16. 24, we have 1 and 24. We have 2 and 12. We have 3 and 8. And we have 6 and 4. Oops, I wrote that backwards. We have 6 and 4. Did it again. So all we're going to do is we're going to see which one do they have in common, that means which one do they both have that is the biggest. So, if you look, the biggest one they both have in common is 8. So that means the greatest common factor is 8. The reason that takes a little while is because you have to write out all the factors, and then you figure out which is the biggest one that they both have. That's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is find prime factorization. This works really pretty well when you have multiple numbers. So for example, if we wanted to find 12, 24, and 32, what is the greatest common factor between all those 3? So all we're going to do is we're going to list out the prime factorization of each of these numbers. And this requires a little bit of work. If you're good at if you're good at prime factorization, I would use this. If you're not, I would not. But the prime factorization of 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. Prime factorization of 24 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And the prime factorization of 32 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And you can look at the last lesson that I did if you want to remember how to do that. Now, once you find the prime factorization of all those numbers, you just circle the ones that they all have in common. So they all have 1, 2 in common. They all have another 2 in common. So we're going to circle that. They do not, this last 3 here, the bottom, this doesn't have a 3. And then these ones have 2s, but this one doesn't have another 2. So that's all. So we're going to carry from each of those, we're going to carry down a 2, carry down a 2, and we're going to multiply those together. So the greatest common factor is 4. So the 4 is the GCF. So that's another way to do it. The third way is a ladder diagram. And this might be the best way to find greatest common factor of multiple numbers. So let's say we wanted to find 12, 18, and 60. So what we're going to do is just like when we did the ladder diagram with the 1 number, we're going to pull out a prime number, but this time we have to pull out a prime number that goes into all of those. Now notice that they're all even, so we can pull out a 2. Now if we pull out a 2 from each of those, that 12 becomes a 6, that 18 becomes a 9, and that the 60 becomes a 30. Now, think about a prime number. What prime number could go into all of those? 2 can't go into 9, so we can't pick 2 again. How about 3? 3 can go into each one of those. So I'm going to pull 3 out of each of them, which leaves me with 6 divided by 3 is 2, 3 divided by 3 is 3, 30 divided by 3 is 10. Now, is there any other prime numbers I can pull out this time? I couldn't pull out a 2, I couldn't pull out a 3, there's nothing else I could pull out. So since I pulled out a 2 from each of them and a 3 from each of them, we're going to do 2 times 3, so their greatest common factor is 6. Alright, so that's the basic 3 ways to find greatest common factor, but I'm going to show you a shortcut using the listing of factors method. So here's what I do. I'm going to taking number 1 from the book. It's 18 and 27. Here's my shortcut. I'm going to take the lower number and I'm going to do its factors. So I'm going to go 1, 18, 2, 9, 3, 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go one by one, starting with the biggest, and I'm going to see if they go into 27. Because if they go into 27, then it's a common multiple. Or, I'm sorry, common factor. So, let's start with 18. Does 18 go into 27? No, it does not. Does 9 go into 27? Yes, it does. So, 9 equals the greatest common factor. Now, what I could have done is I could have listed out all 27s and I could have gone through and said, oh, 9 matches. But if I just write down all of one of them, and I can just see which one is, I can just see 18 doesn't go, 9 does, and then I don't even have to do this. So that's my shortcut. So let's do another example of that. This is number 2 from the book. It's 32 and 72. So I'm just going to start with 32. 1, 32, let's see, 2, and 16. 3 doesn't go into it. Let's see, 4 and 8. And that's it, right? Yep. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to look and see. Starting at the 32. Does 32 go into 72? It does not. How about 16? Does 16 go into 72? No, it doesn't. And if I didn't know that, then I could go 72 divided by 16 and see if it went. But it doesn't. Does 8 go into 72? It does. 9 times 8 is 72. So the greatest common factor of 32 and 72 is 8. I think that's the fastest way. Now, you can do that with 3 numbers too. So we'll look at 24, 48, and 84. So we're just going to start with 24. Let's go 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to test them. So I'm going to first test 24. Does 24 go into 48? Yes, it does. Does 24 go into 84? No, it does not. So since it only goes into one of them and not the other, it's not going to be the greatest common factor for all of them. Now let's go 12. Does 12 go into 48? Yes, it does. Does 12 go into 84? Yes, it does. It goes in 7 times. So 12 is our greatest common factor. That's how I do it with the shortcut. That's how I suggest you do it, but you can do it in any of those ways that I showed you. So I'm going to give you a practice from the book to do. Let's go 12, 60, and 68. So I want you to pause and solve however you want. Okay, so I'm going to start with 12 because it's the smallest number. 12, 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, 4. So then I'm going to go, does 12 go into 60? Yes, it does. Does 12 go into 68? No, it does not, so it can't be 12. Next number is 6. Does 6 go into 12? Yes. Does 6 go into 60? Yes. Does 6 go into 66? No, it doesn't. Let's try 4. Does 4 go into 12? Yes. Does 4 go into 60? It does. Does 4 go into 68? Yes, it does. So our greatest common factor is 4. Another way you could look at that is, since those two numbers are only 8 away from each other, there's no way it could have been anything higher than an 8. It could be a factor of each other. Because since multiplication is counting up, since there's only 8 between those two, our greatest common factor could not be higher than 8. 8 would be the maximum. But in this case, it was 4. So I'm going to give you one problem for the road to do for tomorrow. And you can do it however you choose. Oh wait, actually there's one more thing that I want to go over really quickly. So what about it? What if I gave you this? 8 and 24. I want you to pause and find the greatest common factor between those two. Pause and solve. Okay. Now, you could do 8, 1, 8, 2, and 4. Now, notice, 8 is your first number, right? Test it out. Does 8 go into 24? It does. So, 8 is the greatest common factor. So, the greatest common factor can be one of your numbers. So that's why you always start with the number first and then go down. Okay, last one. Problem for tomorrow to solve. 16, 48, 72. Find the greatest common factor of those numbers for tomorrow. See ya.